what I didn't even realize was going to be an entrepreneurial journey in finding what I call success in a moment that so small, when it's a couple words, and it's called I can. A lot of people play their business like it's a slot machine, and I just put some coins in and I just keep pounding buttons and hopefully something good happens. That's not a business plan. That's not a strategy. That's just luck. And so I decided to open the machine and figure out, where does the quarter get stuck? I talk about community as two different things. You either come to be served or you come to serve. Which one is it? When you start to think about, challenges, and I use this little analogy like the Lego on the floor. If you've ever stepped on one of these at 3 a.m., you know that the true amount of pain. And they this freaking Lego and they throw it. And it's like, well, wait, what did you just do? Like, that problem that was there, you just now threw it out in front of you so that you could step on it again.
Welcome to another episode of Founders Growth. My name is John Hill, aka Small Mountain. I'm the founder of Adapted Growth, and today we have Juan Fernandez on the show. Juan and I have known each other for a while, and I'm super excited to have him on. He is the CEO and founder of Summit Holdings, and has got one of the coolest stories about being a founder and being an entrepreneur that I've ever heard, and I'm excited to dig into that today. Juan, can you kind of give like a quick dime store tour of how long you have been on your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, I would say that, you mentioned the word founder a minute ago. And, I remember, when I was very young, just starting off on, what I didn't even realize was going to be an entrepreneurial journey in finding what I call success in a moment that so small when you think about it. It's a couple words, and it's called I can, right? And that really spawned a whole bunch of opportunities for me. And I built an entire career over the last 30 years around that moment of I can. And I would say that even as I progress in my founder's aspect, journey, and all the aspects of leadership, it's just one of the things that I find an opportunity for us to deliver in. So I've done a lot of cool things. I've written books, I've built companies, I've scaled enterprises, and it's just sifting through the ashes of time, finding the unique nuances and helping people find success is where I'm at now. And I'm really excited to be able to share. And again, thanks for having me, John.
You're welcome, man. We got to meet at a speaking engagement, and that story that you talked about um, was so cool. And the thing that really blew me away was you got up in the front of the whole crowd, and you were like, "Hey, which story do you guys want to hear?" You know, and just being that open and just what do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to hear about and stuff? Really kind of blew me away. I'd never seen anyone do that before. And just kind of speaks to how long you've been in the space and how just authentic you are, right? Like it's not just about sharing the wins and the highlight reel, right? Because this is a hard path and people uh get caught up with it and everything. So just I'm excited to dive into that. The first thing that I have a question about, right, is you have been in the IT MSP space for a very long time, and
Mhm.
you're coming back into it with
Yeah.
Summit Holdings, right? And I'm curious, what are you doing differently this time coming back in?
I don't know that I'm doing anything that's really that different. I would say that I'm approaching what I feel is one of the needs of the channel, right? So, being here as what I call myself a resident MSP, if you will, or resident entrepreneur in the MSP channel. One of the things that I do is, just like we would anywhere else, right? You always see those people sitting on their front porch, and the it's a good day if they're on the front porch with a sweet tea, or it's a bad day if they're out shoveling snow, right? And
Mhm.
so it's a similar thing. We all live here in this wonderful place. And, when I think about some of the things that I've seen over the last years, whether I was building, MSPs, or I was building, products, or I was taking to market companies or investing in SaaS companies, like there's a lot of viewpoints that I've had. And one of the things that I've noticed over the years is the requirement for the restabilization of the entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so one of the things that I am doing now with Summit and the things that we're doing with the MSP Owners Group and all the other companies that we're bringing to light is that, our focus is really on the path of empowering the modern leader and really focusing on the next generation of entrepreneurism. So it's just a gap that I'm trying to fill, not because I don't think that no one else is doing it. I just don't see it being done in the way I think it builds more stability for the community. And a lot of what I do is share, and I don't see that as a compounding growth factor in our channel right now, and
Mhm,
I want to stimulate that nuance. And so that's really what I'm here to do, is to try to, create what I call experience centers to look at how to do things differently, and then be able to walk through the path and understand more about, how is that different than what I've been doing, and how do I move myself into the future, and what's this next generation of this MSP 5.0 thing Juan keeps talking about. Like, I need to create these pathways to success and into the future. And so we're going through it, right? I mean, I'm doing exactly the thing I say I do, and dropping the quarter in and watching the dollar come out. But
mhm.
at the end of the day, I want people to be able to walk on the journey along the same path, and be able to see those realities. So that's really what I'm focusing on, is empowering the next generation of entrepreneurs. And that's really what I'm focused on. It's not about the tech, it's about the tactics, it's about the scale, it's about the opportunity, and it's about the focus in terms of what we're trying to, create at the end. So it's not necessarily much different. It's just it looks different. And
That's
that's
fair.
where I'm trying to help people understand how where they're at, how they can adapt this new mindset of growth and the things that we need to be focused on for the this next era of what I call managed.
Interesting, okay. I love that. Um, One of the things that blew me away, in the first time I saw you speak and whenever we were chatting about it afterwards, and I've met other people who you have worked with, and so I've seen this kind of impact. You're, you're so focused on, like, building everybody else up, right? Like,
Mhm.
everyone who works with you, everyone who's around
Yep.
you and everything. And, it's interesting to see that because, we sometimes have this idea that to be a founder or entrepreneur or whatever, you kind of got to be in it for yourself and everything. I'm curious, have you always had that kind of warmth and drive of building other people up? Is it something you found on your path and decided to lean into? Where does that come from?
I have a lot of stories, and a lot of the stories that I have aren't always of success, right? Most of the most amazing moments in my entrepreneurial journey was sifting through the ashes and figuring out what was the thing that was supposed to come out of that scenario, right? What was it? Why did that not flourish? Or, and in the case, why did it flourish? Like, what was it? Why did that work? I've spent a lot of time sifting through moments to understand that. And as a leader, I've always thought to myself, the most important person you have to lead first is yourself, right? And so being that self-aware leader is my mantra on how I lead, and not looking up to people, but looking at the way others treat people. And so a lot of what I've learned is not necessarily what to do, but I've also felt my way through leadership because I didn't have a lot of people to tell me. I didn't come from a place where I went to school and people showed you what to do and how to run a business and what you should focus on. I felt my way through it. And so with my eyes closed, all I could understand was the words and the sentiment and the way it made me feel. And so in my entrepreneurial learning through my entire career, I've always picked up things that I said, I'll never do that because it makes me feel this way. And
Mm,
so I've allowed the negative components of my journey through life to shape who I am, right? Because I understand, like, if I do this, this is how it makes other people feel. And so in the case that I'm doing what I do now, I always say this, it's I wish somebody would have done this for me. And so rather than make that a wish, I made it a reality, and I'm doing the thing that, we always hear, be the change you want to see, right?
mhm,
That didn't it didn't become real until I started doing it, right? And that's where, I talk about community as two different things. You either come to be served or you come to serve. Which one is it? This very sounds the same, but they're not the same. And
yeah,
so for me, I'm here to help. And a lot of people tell me that, like, why do you do this? Like, how do you make money? And I'm like, I'm not trying to make money off helping others. I'm trying to help others so that we can help each other. And then in turn, we all are successful. And so have I always been this way? it took me a long time. I've always been, tried to encourage other people to like push themselves to go do a thing. And some people are like, no, I can't, no, I can't, no, I can't. And I'm like, but you can. I'm just like, so, and, whether I've been in the leadership role or I've been, I have a whole thing called the bottom up leader. And, I've always been down at the bottom and I've always led up. And so I love being in the trenches with everybody. And as somebody told me one day, it's like, your blood in the mud, Juan. That's what's different about you. And I'm like, that doesn't sound good. Like, am I injured? And he's like, no, it's a military term, buddy. Like, you're in with us, and so that's why we understand. And I'm like, okay, it sounded like you guys were getting ready to handle me. And he's like, no. But it's just I haven't always I've always just felt like, we can treat people good and that there is a better way to do it. And here I am. I'm just trying to pave that path and I'm trying to teach the people that work with me, for me, and around me, um, that we work together to make this place just a little bit better.
I love that. I also know you to be a pretty high output individual, right? And sometimes when you're a high output individual and you're also in a leadership spot and you're trying to motivate others to get to that space, right? Sometimes it's difficult to do. Uh, how have you gotten better at getting other people into higher gears as far as their performance, as far as their work and effort?
I say this all the time, and I use this scenario. I say, look, I'm never going to ask you to do something that I wouldn't do. And I know that's a very different approach for a lot of leaders. A lot of leaders, lead from the front, and I lead in stride, right? So in the case that I'm working, and I always tell people, please don't try to be like me because I'm a little broken. Because I love to build, I love to design, I love to create, I love to immerse myself in things, and I'm very deep in what I do, and I live a very different life, and you know, it's come at an opportunity where I even have other books about how I do things just to help others try to compartmentalize themselves, not to get too sucked into the way that I am as a person, right?
Mhm.
But in terms of how I empower others, I always try to and assist them in the place that they're at. I say, I got 100 keys and you may not be ready for key. Everyone wants key 100. Give me the answer to the end of the story. And I'm like, you kind of need key number 4. Like here's this key. Go open the door and then go through the door and then come back and tell me that experience. Like, it's a feedback loop. Like go through the problem, understand it, and then come back and then teach and train. So, you know, one of the things in leadership is letting go of the keys, right? I have an analogy called if the problem equals one, one is the problem. And in that case, everything that I do is it's if it comes back to me, then I know that I created a problem. So I got to create what I call, and then there's a tweak here, right? So people hear this thing all the time. It's called people process technology. And I realized that in that journey through trying to follow that, it's a fracture, right? And it's, oh, hire the smarter people so that they can figure it out and then you can just sit back and do the thing. And I'm like, is that leadership though? Is that like really like I have to challenge this theory because I realized that there's a different way to do it, right? And if I take my if the problem equals one, one is a problem Rubik's cube and change this around, I realized that if you create a process that empowers the people, you can create a great technology or a great company and create a great culture just by the little shift of just taking time to help your team understand how to win. And for me, when I think about the most amazing thing that you could ever experience in leadership, it's not about an exit. It's not about the money. Trust me, you'll burn through that and you'll feel unfulfilled at the end of it and you'll end up going back to work and doing other things. Been there. Um, it's about when your team knows they can, right? And that's when
Mm.
you unlock them. When they come back and say it works, that's the beauty of it. And you can see them unlock. And that for me is really the part where I try to help people is understanding where they're at and then helping them step up and step out, right? Over their
Yeah.
comfort zone. Like that for me is the moment. And so I do things like when you first met me on weird things where people are like, "Oh, we want change." And I'm like, "You want change? I'm gonna throw change out there and see." First time everyone's ever done a pick your own keynote adventure, right? Like, "Hey, I'm gonna ask you a series of questions and you're gonna pick your keynote today, and I'm gonna rip through one of these presentations that I have ready for you. One of them I really don't wanna do." Right? And of course, the one that everyone votes for is the one that I absolutely don't wanna do. And it was just hilarious that I'm like, pick, do you want to learn about how to be a success and grow and scale, or do you want to learn how to be a failure, burn and just die? And they're like, we want to learn how to burn and die. And I'm like, why would you pick that story? Like, I made it so unattractive.
Mhm.
But that's the beauty of the human aspect is that we all want to learn how not to fail, right? And
Mhm.
that's where a lot of us in leadership are very hesitant to illustrate the gaps, and
Mm.
those are the pitfalls. And it's like, "Oh yeah, no, trust me, you can just jump over that chasm." And it's like, "Bro, there's no bridge there. Like, what are you talking about? Like, well, you just got to run real fast and then jump and then you'll make it." And it's like, uh, there's no bridge there, dude. Like, that's too far. And that's where in leadership, we can oftentimes tell ourselves that, we don't want to share the secret of renting a plane and flying to the city and doing the things, and like there's different growth trajectories, but understanding those moments. And that's where we have to build the bridges to empower the people behind us. And that's the process we have to create to empower the people. So that's my methodology on how I do it. And hopefully that helps somebody that listens to this either today or tomorrow in the future. But it's just, I think the entrepreneurial journey, empowering others, is has been a journey in that I found every which way to do it wrong, and there's only a very few small ways, and there's a combination of ways to do it right. And to be honest with you, I see them all, right? You
Mhm.
hear them, but there's a few of them that feel good. And at the end of the day, it's the one that leaves a legacy behind that allows people to know that made a difference in my life, right? That unlocked me. That empowered me. That stimulated me to want to go and take that heel, right?
Mhm.
So that's what I try to focus on.
I love that. Um, One of the things that, always kind of resonates with me is just how positive of a person you are, right? When I mean, even when the crowd picked the story of "Whoa,"
Oh,
right?
dude.
And you were just, like, so positive about it, but, one of the things we were talking about when we were trying to figure out, like, where to go in this conversation is that hope is not a business plan, right? So how do you balance, like, that positivity and, goals and aspirations with also not being too hopeful and still, like, having your feet planted in reality? How do you get better about that?
I don't know that you ever get ready for that, but I will say, I talk about this often, and, I think it's a lot around mindset, right? Like, my life is not easy. I'll be honest with you, but I will say this. I gauge a couple of things in life around the way I perceive my environment. And in that case where people say, you're always smiling. And I'm like, I don't really have anything to be sad about. Like, when you start to think about, challenges, and I use this little analogy like the Lego on the floor. Everybody sees the meme about the Lego that's on the floor. And if you've ever stepped on one of these at 3 a.m., the
Mhm.
true amount of pain. And I use this analogy because it's easy to simulate too. But in the case that Lego is there, I found that, a lot of people loathe the Lego. They hate it. They're like, "Oh my god, if I," and then they get the Lego and they this freaking Lego and they throw it. And it's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 wait, 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 wait. What did you just do?" Like, that problem that was there, you just now threw it out in front of you so that you could step on it again. Like, that's a misplaced opportunity. It's not a problem to dislike. And so if you find where this, put it in your pocket and figure out where it goes, it completes the puzzle instead of it becoming a
Yeah.
pain in your ass. Like, but so many people pick up the problem and they just keep throwing it and they never solve for it. And then they land up with this compounding effect of resent, guilt, or other things. And for me, I'll take this little thing and I'll stare at it, I'll understand it, I'll look all the way back, like, where does this go? Like, why is this still here? And, when you think about hope, a lot of times when we, think about business, we just hope it works, right? And that's
Mhm,
not exactly how that works. Like, I talk about that scenario similarly, John. When we met, we've spoke a number of times together and some of the stuff, and I talk about the quarter in, dollar out. And
yeah,
when I talk about quarter in, dollar out, it's like when you put the quarter in, like, how does it actually go through the machine? When does the house win and when do I win? What's the algorithm? What's the total number of plays? Like, how do I make this work? And I decided to go through every piece of my business and look at it in those ways, and dropping people in as quarters and watching them get stuck in the machine because they never get to this place.
mhm,
During the pandemic, I was speaking on a stage and I said, hey, how many of you here are struggling to hire people and how many are struggling to retain? And I knew the answer, right? There's 2,000, 3,000 people at this show, and it's the keynote for lunch. And I knew what I was about to do, but I did it anyways. And the entire audience raises their hand, and you can hear their forks. They put them down, and I said, "Well, how many of you here have an employee success program?" And I thought about half of them would spit their food out, like. And I said, to be honest with you, the reason why these employees are not coming and why they don't want to come to your business and why they're leaving is because during this time they don't see themselves being successful with you.
mhm,
I said, the companies that I see leaving the most are the ones that I'm worried the most for. Right. And that's because you haven't gone through the process, no matter how large you think you are, to understand how your employees are going to be successful with you. That translates back to the strategy. And again, the hope that we have something figured out. Just because something worked for a period of time doesn't mean it'll work forever unless you have gone through the process of understanding what it is you do and how does that translate to your customer and employee success, right? And I gave you two KPIs that I focus on, is key people indicator and key profit indicator.
mhm,
And the key people indicator is, do I see my team smiling during the hard times? If I don't see them smiling, it's because they're probably not going to make it through this time because there's not a way. If you have a process to go through a hard time, it's just wind in your sails. It's just it's just a storm. It's fine. We're not going to capsize. We're not going to turn over. Nothing's going to happen. We're just going to hold on because we've never felt this pressure before
yeah,
to get through this storm. But they know they're going to make it. In the other cases, that storm is blowing businesses over and they're falling, and that's creating turmoil, and they're screaming and they're scared, right? And that's when they leave. And so when you think about how you curate those hope business plans or those strategic business plans, you have to be focused on, again, back to the process that empowers people, that creates a great culture, which creates a great company, which creates a technology or a whatever you want. That formulation actually spawns a whole bunch of things if you just change the one thing. And that's where this is going to take time. People are going to have a hard time with this, and I'm sure I'm going to get flack for it. But if they try it
mhm.
and go through the process, there's a lot of them that are like, look, dude, I just want to grab a business off the shelf, bro, and just make some money and leave.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
this isn't for you. This conversation isn't for you. For the
yeah,
rest of I call two things: cultural leadership and transactional leadership. If you're a transactional leader and you just want to focus on the numbers and you want to like just dial it in and you just want to send checks and get out of here, this ain't for you. But those
yeah.
that care about the people, those that want to help others, this is for them. And that's where, when I think about hope as a business plan, that comes as transactional leadership because I just hope it works. I hope one plus two equals three equals four equals seven equals 10, right?
Mhm.
Mine is go through the process of understanding how to empower your people to grow a corporation and a culture and a wonderful outcome. So there's a difference. I know I dove into some talking points there, but hopefully it
No,
helped.
that's great. When you right, talking about people smiling in the bad times, if you see someone struggling during those down times, right, during those bad times, how do you work with them to try to turn it around, or is it like a lost cause and they just need to be removed because, like if you're the bad energy on a team, you're the bad energy on a team, right? And it can suck all the morale out of the room and everything. So in those moments of high stress and stuff like that, what do you do whenever you see someone not being able to stay in the right mindset of being positive, we're gonna make it through? How do you handle that?
I wouldn't say that I focus on their positivity more than I focus on their perseverance, right? And in any case that I recognized my entire life has been, formed around areas of my life that I didn't become who I am today by easy streets, right? And I
Mhm.
recognized that early on that I needed to create pressure to do amazing things. And so I illustrate how you have to create these nuances around you to create compounding pressure to really stretch who you are and make you go through these times. And
Yeah.
the challenge that I have is for people that give up halfway. Right. I'm like, man, you could have made it through that. And they're just like, I'm tapping out. I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. Like they get in their head and they're just like, I'm out. Like,
Mhm.
and I can see that moment because they back up and they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. And I have a couple of things that I talk about, like, and I say that I can teach people that want to learn, right? And I say that there's an adage out there says that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and
One
when
of
the
my
student
favorite
is
lines.
truly ready, the teacher will disappear, right?
Yep.
And that's in my world. I can only teach those that want to learn, right? And so
Mhm.
that's why I say there's a difference between cultural leadership and transactional. Transactional doesn't want to hear anything I'm saying. They
Oh,
don't want
yeah.
they're like, "Dude, I don't wanna hear a damn word you're saying because I don't really care about the people. I care about the process, and I care about the profit."
Mhm.
And that's okay. That's cool. It's okay. But I will say that when I see folks that are struggling, I give them an opportunity to understand why. Even in the case, like, I have these scenarios all the time. "Hey, I just," I listen actively, right? I'm like, "Hey, they've had that problem twice." Most people don't hear that, and they're just like, "Okay, now you're just being annoying because you can't solve a problem," and I'm like, "That's not what they're saying."
Yeah.
They're saying that they don't have enough information or education to be able to feel successful in this moment, and they're actually that's exuding, and it's coming out as a request for help. Rather than helping them, we often shun them and saying, "Well, you're just not gonna make it." So
Yep.
you have to go back and say, "Hey, look, here's the education that you need to do, and I need you to do this around this thing, and then I need you to come back and teach us how to do that."
Yeah.
Now, that move right there is a chess move, bro, that it will change everything. Because when you get them to go in and push on the button and give them the access to the thing and then have them come
100%.
back and train us, you make them fully accountable for it. And
Yeah.
then they have to become immersed in it. So it creates a really obnoxious pressure because number one, I don't what do you mean I had a problem? What are you talking about, man? Like, and now you want me to go teach somebody about this? I'm like, yeah, yeah, I do.
Mhm.
Yeah, because I know you can because I did it.
Mhm.
That's how I started, and, yeah, you can get through that. Now if they go through it, that's all I need to see. That's initiative, right? You
Absolutely.
can't teach initiative, and that creates positivity because then they feel excited about the fact that they did it, and they're like, "I did it," and I'm like, "There's a smile. Keep going. Go to
Mhm.
the next problem. Come back and tell us how you fixed it." Like, keep going, right? And that when
Yeah.
you find the ones that don't want to, they're like, "I don't wanna do this, dude. I'm not gonna teach anybody nothing, and I'm like, either you tell me how to fix it or I'm not." That's the check move, right? Like, okay, that's okay, let's try another angle. Let's try a different motivation tactic, and if that
Mhm.
doesn't work, then you gotta cut the cloth. Like, you gotta move quick too, because if you don't prune that tree, you're gonna have big problems at the end. And so
Yeah.
you gotta find your right you gotta culture is not it's something so many people take for granted, and it's most of life's lessons are staring you right in the face. The word culture as a definition means to cultivate, right? To trim, to prune, to manage, to mold.
Mhm.
Most of us say, "Oh, well, we just want to put culture on a shelf and it should just happen." And it's like, no, you have to be actively engaged in creating that.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of leaders miss the mark. And it was like, "Oh, well, we got a great culture." And I'm like, "What did you do to prune it?" "What are you talking about? HR did a great job." And I'm like, "That ain't it. That ain't
Yeah.
it. How invested are you in that? None." Okay, well, there's your answer. Like, just
Yeah,
if you're a good person doesn't mean it's a great culture. And that's where, you know,
100%.
back
And
to the,
it's not the ping pong table or the beers at lunch on Friday and stuff like that. Like, the cultural stuff has been one of the coolest like pockets of knowledge I've like leaned into and studied on my own path, right? And one of the things that I think about is uh, you're gonna have one no matter what, right? Because when you have a
sure.
group of people together, a team together, there's gonna be an atmosphere, right? And if you're not intentional about it, there's probably room to make it better, and that's how I always think about it of like, even if you just show up and you're in, GSD mode, just get stuff done and okay, like that becomes your culture, and like it's going to be there no matter what, right? So you might as well put a little bit of effort into like making it something that like actually benefits you and your team and things like that. So I love that. How do you said change the direction and change and, like, use a different tactic. I'm curious, like, what in the teaching thing, is so cool, right? Because, like, when you get someone to opt in meaningfully, right, to going and then doing something difficult, there's all the changes that happens there. Do you have any other ways that have found to be useful of getting kind of people unstuck, getting them into the positive mode other than like just asking them to go deeper and try to figure it out so that way they can teach it to someone else?
Yeah. And again, back to I talked about in the beginning of our conversation was as a leader, one of the things that I've always said is I'll never ask you to do something I wouldn't do.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's an accountability matrix, right? And so that's up to me to really dive in and to deliver on. And one of the things in leadership is that you have to sit down with people and help them understand the way that they learn. And I when we were talking and when we've done some things together, I teach and train in a number of ways, right? I talk, I show, I teach, we learn, you do, I watch, and then I get to celebrate your win, right? So in those nuances, reading, writing, executing, learning, teaching are all the things that I take as angles for people to come back in. So even in our business now, right? Like everybody's going through this process and we're all going through the quarter end, right? And I'm like, all right, where are you getting stuck? Where are you getting stuck? Oh, I'm getting stuck here. Okay, well, do me a favor, write me a process on how that works. Like, hey, then come back and talk to us about how this is happening. And hey, by the way, now it's yours. You're gonna own that area. And they're like, "What? Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, that's all you now." Like, and they're like, "What? Like, this is weird and scary and crazy." And I'm like, "Oh, don't worry, we got you." Like, and
Mhm.
so when you see people that are struggling in a specific area, and I say this all the time, the test taker has to take the test. And
Oh,
the test taker has to pass the test, right? So, and it is an opportunity for us all, and it's all about the amount of effort you're going to put into that. That tells me your deliberance in terms of what you want to accomplish, and that's where I look at it in a number of different ways and find, okay, well, are they capable? Yes. Are they knowledgeable? Maybe. Are they, passionate? Possibly, right? And looking at all those nuances and saying, okay, well, here's the area that we just have to shift and turn, and here's what we need to do that. And so those different approaches to working with them to get them to the place. And again, I'll be fully transparent, right? And Summit Holdings, what's etched in the mast of our ship is the definition of success, the first thing we did. It's literally carved as a center post of this entire ship. And it says, our mission for success is when a leader creates and empowers another leader. But success does not come until that leader creates and empowers another leader. And so that is what they've signed up for, right? And
mm,
I give them, hey, if you're not in for this, and they're like, well, hey, man, I've never led anything, and I'm like, cool. I remember saying the same thing, uh, and here we are, right?
yeah,
So it's not that it's not possible, and that's the thing that we have to help them do is see the impossible become possible. And that's where you have to kind of find the angle in which you have to go, but you can't do that without understanding what you deliver, right? So
100%.
back to the process. If I have a process for their success, then they're successful, and that should be an outcome. And
Yeah.
that's where we're focused. And so every piece of that, there's 1,000 different ways to activate people. It's just a matter of searching them out and having not just me do it, but the rest of the team. Like, hey, like, have you tried this? And then they try and they're like, oh my God, that works. So it's kind of like we're in a nursery of bonsai trees and everyone's trimming and pruning and creating their own little companies and their own little worlds. And, some plants are dying and some don't need water. They're over, we're over caring for them, and some are being under cared for. And it's just really cool to watch. And, that's
That's
where,
all.
we get an opportunity. And I think everybody should, as a leader, work with their teams to try to find, instead of focusing on the company's success, focus on the people's success, and the company will grow from that.
I love that. Shifting gears a little bit, one of the things we were kind of talking about, and you said this very interesting thing, and I'm excited to hear more about this. You said that one of the things you've struggled with was not exactly imposter syndrome, but you have had some moments of kind of similar thinking, right? Can you talk a little bit more
Yeah.
about how that has shown up for you and how you've worked on it?
Yeah, I don't know that, I've always been one of the youngest execs at the table for most of my career. I mean, and I mean really young. And so, you got to think like, being in the C level in your 20s, like, I don't know how many people get to experience that. And I look back at it now as even now I'm still young and doing the things that I do. But, you know, I find myself in rooms where everyone's much older than I, and they have a lot of respect for the amount of effort that I put into it. But for many, many, many years, I didn't believe in myself, in my abilities to stand on my own 2 feet. I always felt like, not imposter syndrome. It's just that I didn't belong, right? And that's where it wasn't that I didn't feel like I was capable. I studied hard to become good at what I do, right? And I
Mhm,
was very technical to a depth that was at nauseum, right? I had more certifications than most people would ever want to accommodate in their life. And I've done things that are completely out of the norm. I took every challenge and everything people said I couldn't do as a as something I was going to landmark on I would do, right?
mhm,
And I did. And it's not because I did it out of spite, it's because I did it out of purpose. And I wanted to be, okay, well, if people say I can't do it, then maybe I should try. And then I'm going to go do this. And then next thing I know, I'm like, but it was always this fuel. And I've kept this even now in the evolution of who I am and why I'm still here. People ask me, why are you still here? I'm like, because I'm still relative. It's not that I'm here because I choose to be here. It's because I belong here, because I can
mm,
still communicate at the level of the place that I live at. People feel like they don't belong and they leave, right? Because I've had my time and I did my work, and I hear this all the time. I've lived by a preface of this thing that I call death behind the desk. It was something that fueled me early in my career when I was watching people. They would get to a certain place, and as soon as they made it to the desk job, they would just stop learning,
mhm,
growing, and they would just, it felt like their spirit just died there and they became irrelevant. And the next thing you know, I remember them coming back to me as I passed them technically and moved into other areas and started running orgs and corporations, and they would come back to me looking for jobs, and I'm like, yeah, but your skill set died 7 years ago, man. Like, I don't have anything that requires maintenance on a past technology. And we're still at that place right now, right? Like, we're on the prefaces of this next explosion of technology. And I'm completely immersed in design, development, creation, all the things, and being on the forefront of it and making myself present in the moment so that I feel like I belong. And that's where a lot of people, when people ask me, "What are you still doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I belong here." "What do you mean? Am I still doing here?" Like, I'm
yeah,
creating the future of technology, man. Like, I'm an active contributor. It's not that I'm still talking about Windows NT back in the early days, right? Like, I've made myself relative to the time and the space that we're in, and that has given me the opportunity to feel more like I belong. So,
hmm,
it was an interesting journey to find that, because no one teaches you that, how to stay relative and how to stay in the moment. and being part of the ecosystem. That's why I spend a lot of time learning and understanding and trying to query the current ecosystem in which we live and trying to curate new methodologies and trying to create new ways and pathways to success to get to the future. So this is why I'm here, right? And this is how I became more of what I was afraid of is not belonging.
Yeah.
And I feel comfortable in the place now, and I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to contribute. And it's it's an interesting way to think about it, but that was my journey to get here.
The thing you said about, dying behind the desk, right? It happens so frequently and regularly in sales, right? Because
Yeah,
there's no appreciation for the craft, right? Or maybe you just, are burning yourself out because you're holding it badly, right? And you're just trying way too hard and you see the sales manager, the sales leader role as just a break,
yeah,
right? And if anything, it's one of the hardest I would
mhm,
say gaps to try to like get through is
sure,
going from being a doer to being an actual leader that gets other people to do. It's very hard to make that gap and that jump. And if you're just wanting to lead because you're tired of the lower level of the job or whatever, right? You're probably going to die behind that desk a little bit faster than if you were still willing to go out and eat your own dog food and get in the trenches, however you want to hold that.
yeah,
Yeah, it's so common in sales leadership, unfortunately. Um, Changing gears a second, right? You talk a lot about the customer journey
yeah.
and sales as a process, which kind of blew me away the first time I heard you kind of talk about these topics because I've been talking about sales as a process for a while, and normally I don't hear anybody else talking about this. Right? Where does your passion for like the customer journey and having a good onboarding process and stuff like where does all that come from?
It's the same as we've mentioned a little bit, right? It's understanding, and that's why you don't hear it a lot because we're not taught that way, right? Like,
Mhm.
I kept walking down that same dark alley and I kept running into the same brick wall, and it was just the same outcome over and over. And I was like, this isn't right. Like, doesn't actually, like, you can get this, you can make this work, but this doesn't work without a lot of like nuance. And I was like, how can I help people simply get from A to B? And, the customer journey, if you will, was curated based on a number of learnings, right? And so when I think about sales as a nuance, I say build products and services that everybody can afford and for a price that they can't afford not to,
Mhm.
right? And when you think about I'm trying to do in sales what I don't like, and I'm trying to remove the no. So I went no hunting for years to find all the no's that I was getting and figure out how do we get to yes, and then only ask questions that lead to the yes. And that's what created that class called Know the No, is knowing the no before you get it, and then understanding the customer journey and going through that because all I did in the customer journey was figure out how to remove the no and address the flow, right?
Mhm.
And so allowing them to move from point A to point B in succession allowed my team to instill confidence. And so they could see it, I could see it, the customer could see it. It was a great waypoint saying, "Look, you're right here in our process. Like, we're going here and this is how this is going to work. How do you feel about this?" It's not, "Are you going to do it? Are you going to talk to me about price?" Because the value is no longer negotiable because I'm showing you what you want and all you want is to be successful with me,
Yeah.
right? And that's
Mhm.
where we talked a little bit about in that. And and so the customer journey has been a big thing for me, right? And when I think about how we get the business to grow, right? If I have a program and a process that empowers the people, that empowers the company, then the customers that walk in here should have the best experience because they can clearly see them being successful on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think when we, you heard me use this analogy. It's just like a diet plan, right? Like at the diet plan, why do I try to a diet plan? Is because why? Because I want to lose weight. I want to feel better. I want to feel more vitality. I want to look good in the mirror. I want to look good at the Christmas party coming up, right? Like I want something and this plan looks like it might work. It's the same thing. Like what we say to customers in our space is that we're going to get them somewhere and then they don't land up there. Why?
Mhm.
It's because you don't have a plan, a way to get them there. You just have words. And that's really where, hey, buy products and then guarantee this and do that. And oh, you can make money and your customers get this. And they take that as verbatim. And then we over promise and under deliver. Right. And that
Mhm.
again, so for me, the customer journey is the true up. I wanted people to see the reality behind what it looks like to deliver success and how to break it down. I don't care how you do it, but go through each one of the segments of your business and figure out how do you communicate what your customers are going to go through and how do your employees know what to deliver. And so that was really what it was about. And, you know, sales as a methodology has been something, again, I went back through and studied all the psychology behind why does this work? And I'm not a traditional sales guy, but I sure as hell can sell stuff. I just say, you can't buy anything from me, but if you want something, you'll buy it, right? And that's,
Mhm.
you know, for me, it's all about build something that people want so that you never have to sell a day in your life.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, uh, whenever I'm working with someone and they've, kind of missed that window or that opportunity, they come in, okay, John, how do I close this deal? Okay, what do they say the problem is? Well, John, that it's different. It's not, right? Like you're not asking the core questions. You're not putting it into play. And so that way you're either scared, you're not sure, or you're running on some sort of weird sales tactic that you're not supposed to like haul it all out and have the important conversation, you know?
Well, and that's everything is peanut butter and jelly, right? It's one if I have something that we this is the I talked about this as the accidental entrepreneur. It was a talk that I did years and years ago, and I got interesting reviews from it. Me and Arlen Sorensen were chatting about this back in the old days, and one of the things we talked about was as an accidental entrepreneur, and I can say that because I was one and have been in a number of cases where you just things start up for no good reason is we sell ourselves the lie of that everybody needs it,
Mm,
like cybersecurity, like technology, like managed services, like ABCDEFGHIJKLMNOP. That's the first lie we tell ourselves. And then we say, okay, well, if I just could sell more of that, then I put a sales process on it. And it's like, okay, this is a thing that we think people want. And then we go out and we try to accomplish it by asking, applying a sales methodology that is going to try to connect to a disparate process. And that's where it's, you forgot the bread. You know what I
mhm.
mean? Like, we all associate a peanut butter and jelly with an actual sandwich. Like I just did
Yeah,
it 2 seconds ago. In your mind, you thought you were getting the whole thing. You missed the whole point, bro. Like you have no, like you got peanut butter and jelly in your freaking hands. Like that doesn't make a great sandwich at all. Now, I mean, for kids, they would love to do it. And I, as a kid, would have, but you're missing the bread, right? Like
mhm,
the whole point is how are you going to actually eat this? Like, and that's where I think to your point, we struggle oftentimes and back to the hope, right? We're just going to
mhm,
cast a few coins into the hope machine and hope something works. And you can't do that. You got to go through
yeah,
the process. You need to understand how to effectively activate a business that is worth buying. That's where we can go out and sell something worth buying, right? And that's where, I think you're spending a lot of time probably with a number of folks trying to help them understand what it is they do.
mhm, yeah, absolutely. A lot of people wanna fight the current, right? Like, they'll have people, "I just wish you did this. I just wish you did this. I just wish you did this," right? And in an earlier episode, Dan, Bennett was a guest, and everyone was just like, "Hey, will you just do our editing? Will you just do our editing?" And he's like, "I don't
Sure.
wanna do your editing. I don't wanna do it. I don't wanna do it. I don't wanna be an agency." And now he finally, like, started to slow down and listen to it and figure out a way through it, kinda to the point you were talking about earlier, right? Don't throw away the Lego, right? If people are coming and asking you for it, there's something there, as opposed to trying to sell them the thing that you think you want them to have, like humans are just so interesting at like fighting the currents as opposed to just like leaning into them and kind of and I say this as someone who's fought a lot of currents on my path, Um, so I love that, right? There's all the room to fight against the current, but if you can find a lane inside of it, it'll take you to where you wanna go. We just have to be open to those conversations and perspectives.
Yeah, I love that analogy because I often work with MSPs and, I shouldn't even say work. I'm just more like a friend to them. And they probably likely pay people to do some of the stuff that I help just, in my free time. And then one of the things I describe myself as a river guide. I'm like, look, I'm here to, we're going to go over this. You guys want to go over the bump or do you guys want to go around it? Which one? Like, all right,
Mhm.
well, okay, let's go over the bump this time. And oh, there goes Chris. Okay, grab Chris, put him back in the ship. Like, okay, my God, now we got to stabilize. Like, all right, let's row back a few ways. Like, you guys want to go over the bump? You want to go around? Like, okay. And it's just, you're right when you talk about currents, and the way that we deal with business. It's always an interesting ebb and flow, right? We're
Yeah,
always trying to figure out how to get more, but do we always take time to learn how to get more, right? And that's where I think the opportunity lies.
absolutely. I'm gonna shift gears into some of the rapid fire questions, right? And so
Let's go.
we we talked about these before. So for someone who's starting today, right? They're going out on their own as a founder. They want to build something and sell it, or they're building something they're purposeful and passionate about. What do they need to be thinking about, like day one, when it comes to like IT, cybersecurity, making sure that you're set up for long term success that most people miss when they're new?
So I think that that's exactly the part that they miss is the part that's unsaid, right? And a lot of folks don't pay attention to kind of going back to some of the interesting beginning nuances is a business plan. Like,
Mm,
how are you going to actually make money? And I think that our industry is really interesting because in the managed services space, you can get in here and make revenue. And I talk about two quantifiers: time to revenue, time to profitability, two different things, right? And nobody really pays attention to the latter, right? They always pay attention to time to revenue as a quantifier for a successful business and
mhm,
never ever start to dive in until they get to like $3 million and they're like, dude, I've never made a dollar in my life and I don't know why. I'm still working full time, but I don't make money. And I'm like, yeah, you got yourself a really great job and provided employment for other people, but is that really what you came to do? And I think that focusing on what it is you wanna do first, and then
mhm.
focus on how you're gonna make the money. It's not about selling products. It's not about finding pain and doing these other things. It's about purpose. It's about your passion, and then it's about your people, and it's your profits, right? So, when you look at those things in line and you try to, assess those and figure out how you're gonna do it, I would encourage people to build a business plan and then put it together in a way and then just do a quick test. Go to a bank and try to get a loan. If they wouldn't give you money for it, then no one else is going to give you money for it, right?
Hmm,
Because and that's a free assessment right there. There you go. There's a free one. They can put that on the deck. That didn't cost you a dollar other than your time.
yeah,
So if you can't get them to buy it and to fund you, then that's probably not a good idea on your approach. You probably need to tweak a few things. They'll help you. Work with the SBA to figure out the things you need to be doing. Find the resources, find good people that are willing to give you good advice, and search out areas that of people that have been through it and ask them the question, not what would you do if you did it over again? What did you screw up? And how did
yeah,
you fix it? And so I would say those that are starting out, there's a lot of people that are stepping in, they're just grabbing tools and coming to market and then becoming what we call a value added reseller.
mhm,
I was like, hey, I can sell a thing and they'll buy it. And again, that's back to what I talked about. I hope it works because that's not a plan. That's just selling a thing to sell a thing.
yep,
And they'll land up in one of our classes, John, asking, how do I now create a sales program to sell more things? And it's
oh,
like,
yeah,
you don't have a business yet. So
mhm,
focus on creating an actual business and one that will scale.
I love the idea that you can just go to a bank with your business plan and try to get a loan, right? Because it is a really great barometer of like, do you have anything, right? Like, what a cool idea and absolutely free, and banks, like opportunities, right? I used to be a banker. And so, when someone comes in and like, "Hey, can we I don't even know if this is at a place to where we could fund it. Like, could you help me?" Like, oh, I love that. And that doesn't cost anything other than a little bit of time,
It's a
checking your
100%.
ego,
Yeah.
right? And deciding that you should commit it to paper so that way you can go check it. Man, I love that. Okay, next question. What is the piece of, dogma or tweet on social media around business that you can appreciate now, but you had to learn it the hard way?
Hmm. How to temper the hustle culture moments, right? You
Oh,
know,
okay.
you know, a lot of that pressures you into believing you need to just be doing things
Yeah.
and be doing things at a rapid succession and, hey, just burn through every, wheatgrass field that you can find on the way through your entrepreneur ecosystem and hope that, the fields grow next year.
Mhm.
And it's just interesting, right? And I did that in my younger years, and I thought, "Okay, well, let me grow this thing, and let me grow this thing, and let me grow this thing, and let's do this, and let's do that." And you take on too many things.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, you got a lot of farms, man, and,
Mhm. Mhm.
all of them start to dwindle, and the next thing you know, none of them are really growing anymore because you're not taking care of them in a way that's meaningful. And so really focusing on one thing is and being really, really good at that one thing. There can be a lot of pieces in that one thing,
Mhm.
but that I got caught up in that, and it took me a minute to back up and say, "Hold on a second, like, I'm doing too much here," and it caused burnout, it caused
Yeah.
stress, it created I have an ability to become a vacuum of energy, and it drowned in my family in it, it drowned my relationships in it,
Mhm.
because when I get focused on something, I it's like a vortex, man, like, I just like, everything in my life just becomes an absolute, um, shit show, if you will, because of the fact that I'm not taking care of all the things,
Yeah.
and so, and a lot of us measure, that because, we were focused for a period of time in that hustle culture to just focus on yourself. Just go do you, just get you and no matter what, just take, take no prisoners, right? You just pull it in and you just get your shit done. And there's so many sacrifices that come as learning lessons on the backside of that.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that that was one of the ones that I recognized, and it's caused me to set boundaries. It's caused me to try hard. My family now recognize they're like, "Oh, he's just gonna work all the time. That's what he does." But I've started to back up. Like, "Hey, I need to take time for my health, my personal space and my headspace and clear my deck and think clearly and focus."
Mhm.
So that's probably one of them that got me, and I say it got me, and, I found a way out of it, but it's still part of me, but
Yeah.
it's now a tempered part of me.
Yeah. I love that. One of the things that I talk about with people, right, whether they're a salesperson and we're working together or they're a founder, is like you got to tend all the gardens, right? Like you got your family, you have your friends, you have your network, you have your clients, you have your team, and they all need different forms of nurturing, right? But like if you're not present, if you're not paying attention to it, you are by default taking it for granted, you know? And you and I both know a bunch of people who are
Yeah,
unqualified successes, right, in business, but they're divorced, right? They don't have much relationship with their family and everything, and I can get very fixated on what I'm working on as well, and I can just like force my head down and everything, and so
yeah.
I also have to, cultivate a little balance, intentionally, because otherwise it won't be something I lean into. Last question, Juan. With everything that you have seen in the space, right? You've been on the entrepreneurial path for a very long time, and things have changed a lot. What would be your piece of advice for someone who's starting today? One piece of advice.
Focus on your people. You know, one of the things that's going to change in the future, and you're going to right now you can see it, right? If you take a look at the trend line in terms of the companies that are out there and the dollars that are moving around in the ecosystem and the trillions and billions, and looking at some of the decisions that corporate America is making in terms of this next generation of technology, they're making early bets on automation or in artificial intelligence, and it's coming at the cost of jobs. Now, am I a naysayer for AI? I'm developing AI, right? But I would say that for us in the future, it's not going to just be about the automation of the technology. It's going to be about those that effectively use it to interlace with humans to empower them into the future. I call it the Iron Man suit. I can't trademark that because apparently there's a great, comic book around it that, it will not let me trademark this. And I appreciate that he used it because we want to create these opportunities for humans to become superhuman,
Mhm.
right? And that's where I think we gotta focus is the people. Focus more on getting them ready for what's next. Don't get rid of them now. They got you here, right?
Yeah.
They've been along the journey with you. Don't be that leader that starts to get rid of the people because of the profit, right? And that's
Mhm.
where, there is a future that is human. And I want us to all think about how we can empower that and make that a motion. And for those that are on that journey, I hope they find me and they can come back later and tell me I was wrong, or they could tell me, man, thanks for that. But that's where we're headed. I'm on that journey personally. I came back in here to do exactly that, and I can only hope that for those listening here and in the future, that we continue to remember that there's something more important than money and connection, people, and the way we can take care of this world is important. So, and hopefully that makes a little bit of an impact, even if it's just a 1/1000th.
Yeah, absolutely. Juan, thank you so much for coming on, man. I really appreciate it. I like I said at the jump. I mean, hearing you speak a couple of times, just blown away with your transparency and being just open to sharing the good and the bad. If people want to come keep check you out, figure out what you're doing, see if maybe there's room to work together and everything, where would you send them?
100%. Come find me on LinkedIn. You come over to my LinkedIn. Just look me up, Juan Fernandez. Type in MSP. There's not very many of us out there in the world. But on the other end of the stick, my calendar is also there. So just find time. I'm willing to talk to anybody, help anybody I can. Click on, find time and let's get on and see what we can do to help improve this world a little bit.
Awesome. Juan, thank you so much for coming on. I really do think that that this is going to help some people start with clear intentions and actually get to the levels of success that they're looking for. Really appreciate you coming in.
Honor
Thank you, my friend. Have a great day.
you too.